What's up, guys? I pray you have a blessed day so far. Welcome to Living in Truth Ministries. My name is Christian Kaltov, and I pray you continue to have a blessed week as we walk into the Easter service and remember what Christ has done for us. Now, today we'll be discussing biblical translations. Before anyone really starts their biblical studies or any kind of study, one must first be able to understand and trust that which they study is actually reliable. Of course, the Bible is one of such things. But we do this with multiple things such as language skills, psychology, sociology, and so on. We've tried to understand why these fields of studies are reliable. And what are we doing to actually trust information we're given? Scientists constantly look at their data to try to see if their scientific theories are possibly reliable. Today we're going to look for the same in the Bible. After all, the Bible is one of the most attacked books, constantly claimed to be corrupted by both other religious groups such as Muslims and atheists alike. Many seem to think that translations of the Bible today are not really reliable. But is that really the case? Some, in fact, point specifically to the number of translations that we have today for the English language and other languages. Such translations, they say, is how can we trust which translation is really true? Did they not just corrupt the Bible when they translated from the original language to the language that we have today for English? How can we really trust that? Now, is their claims really true? Do these multiple translations mean that the Bible can't be trusted, that somehow was corrupted by the church today? We're going to take a quick look at such questions. Of course, we can't deny there's a lot of translations of the Bible. But why is that? Is it because the people who worked on the ESV translation thought the people who worked on the NIV translation got it largely wrong or completely wrong in any way? Or because the KJV committees translated the Bible so badly that the RSV translators had to correct it completely? For that matter, does the book of John change when it addresses men, women, athletes, or soldiers? Because there apparently are translations specifically for men, women, athletes, soldiers, and even teenagers. So does that mean the translation changes? Now, the main reason for all these kind of things happening, this variety of translation, lies with the problem of translation as well as something we call textual criticism. And we're going to look at these two things today. Now, textual criticism is a technical discipline that compares the various copies of the biblical text in an effort to determine what was most likely the original text. Effectively, a theologian or a Bible scholar grabs several different original texts, which we call manuscripts, that have been discovered throughout history that are the closest to the original timeline of when the books of the Bible were likely to be written. The best way to understand this is like studying old letters. We see old letters from when the United States first was founded, and we looked at them. We tried to figure out how old is this letter, and is this letter really reliable? Is it just a copy? Is a signature here a copy of the letter, and can we trust this letter to be an accurate copy of the previous? Now, most of our manuscripts are copies from the last. However, what we can tell for sure is that the closest one we have is only 200 years after the fact of the original events that occurred in the Bible. Now, the reason why that's so important to understand is because when we look at the manuscripts, and we will discuss this in a later video, we see that many of the other historical figures actually have manuscripts of actual historical facts that we can actually trust today, such as enters information about Roman wars, Roman imperial wars, and Roman emperors are actually hundreds of, if not thousands of years older, and we actually have, the older manuscripts that we have is just about 200 years older from the time it was originally assumed to have been written. As such, it seems to be more reliable. Now, the second reason is because of the problem of translation. The best way we can see this is from an example. Let's look about to go down. Let's look at that phrase. In English, we say about to go down. How would one translate such a saying to Spanish? Now, if we were to look at the actual word by word saying, we would say something like acerca de va para abajo. If you were to say that to a Hispanic, they will look at you crazy, not know what you're trying to say. Even if you're trying to pick a fight, when you're trying to say about to go down. If you were to try to say about to go down, a correct translation would be algo va a pasar, or algo alguien va a pegar, or something like those kind of things. Or if we look at the common phrase piece of cake, in Spanish, we would say pedazo de bizcocho o pastel. However, we wouldn't be able to get the same concept when you would say piece of cake in Spanish, and you would say that about, like the test was a piece of cake. We would never say that in Spanish. There is not such a phrase. So how do we translate the concept of piece of cake in Spanish? We just simply say it was super easy in Spanish, which would be ese examen fue super fácil. We don't actually have a catchy phrases like that. That is largely why there's so many problems with translation. We have to understand that the Bible was not originally written in English. It was actually written in ancient Greek language called Koine Greek, and that's only for the New Testament. The Old Testament was written largely in Hebrew, as well as small portions of the Old Testament was written in Arabic. So, understanding these concepts, we now understand that there's certain catchphrases and certain ways that they spoke back then that can't really be perfectly translated and can have multiple different translations, just as we saw, it's about to go down. If we were to say in Spanish, we can translate it into 3 different ways. It still has the same exact meaning, but it's not word for word, because word for word won't translate the actual meaning that was said in the original language to today. That's why the problem translation exists. Now, doesn't the fact that there are differences in manuscripts mean that the Bible has changed? So we do know there's some differences in manuscripts, and we'll discuss that in much more detail next lesson video on this. But there are several thousand differences in the manuscripts. Now, doesn't that mean that the Bible has changed? Some would claim that is the case. In truth, not really. When we're talking about the entire full story, the truth is, really, no, because the fact is that after hundreds of years of copying it all down and translating every manuscript that has been found, there may be a few different word selections here and there. For example, instead of the, there's an A in the translation that would work better. Every manuscripts that have been found, some of them may have like a few words or a few grammar missing, like a comma here or there. But the ultimate meaning of the entire passage ultimately does not change. This alone can be considered a miracle, because how difficult it is to transmit this message after being repeated. Now, there is a game that can serve as an example of that kind of struggle. This game is the telephone game. Now, the telephone game, when you play, you say a phrase in a line. So let's say you have 10 players. And I've done this with some teenagers before in a youth group. And when you put these teenagers together and give them one phrase from one end and try to get the whole message you say, and it's just a 5-word sentence, oftentimes you won't actually get all the way back and actually get the correct answer, unless the teenagers are really focused and actually getting it down, and they made it. But then when it gets more complicated and you get the sentence to be 10 words long, it becomes even much harder. It's so hard that most of the times they don't even get it. You may get one group of teenagers or adults that can do this, but then compare it to a large portion of people over hundreds and hundreds of years from each other, and then each one of these is copying not just one sentence of 10 words, but entire paragraphs. Not just entire paragraphs, but entire pages. And not just entire pages, but entire book that in the English translation today goes above 1,000 pages long. So, can we say that if the message remains the same, but there's a few words here and there that are missing or different between manuscripts, that the Bible is corrupted? No. Actually, it's quite a miracle that the message at all has not changed. For the most part, if you try to play the telephone game, oftentimes when people get the words wrong, they actually change the entire message of the entire system. The entire concept changes, and sometimes the message can go awry completely and mean the exact opposite of what they were talking about. But that's not the case with the Bible. That's what I like to call the miracle of translation. The miracle of translation of the Bible is that even though it's been hundreds of years apart from each other, the translation of the Bible is still the same. The message of Scripture has not changed throughout the years. We see that from manuscript to manuscript, the translations, all the manuscripts, all the different variations that they want to point out, still have the same ultimate meaning. Now, next time, we're going to look at some of the other things, specifically how these manuscripts are, and we're going to look deep at the manuscript errors that are found in the manuscripts. We're going to move on from the problem of translation and look specifically at this manuscript's errors and see if there really is nothing bigger than what it sounds and why we find them and how they work. Okay? We're going to discuss this next time on Sunday. I'll see you guys there. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe to this channel, and have a wonderful and blessed night.